You ever play a game where characters stick out like a sore thumb? Like, the game is building itself to be one thing, and then you've got a character who is or is doing something completely different, almost like they're from a completely different game, but not actually from a different game, because, you know, that'd be confusing. It might be important to say at the start that I don't think that's automatically a bad thing, even though it might have sounded like it was. Sometimes to create the right type of ambience, you might need characters who behave in wildly different ways and feel like they could easily be from another video game. But it doesn't stop them from feeling a little out of place at times. Maybe something changed during development and what started as a family-friendly party game is now a violent FPS game. I don't think this has ever happened before. And yeah, obviously crossovers don't count because the presence of a weird character in a fighting game roster or in a racing game that's how crossovers work. They can only make an appearance in these kind of games because they have a game of their own to go back to. I know that it provides the topic with a more literal answer, but I'm thinking more hypothetically. Although Snake being in Smash Bros was a little weird. Maybe that's why he never came back. Damn, this video got a little sad all of a sudden. Let's just go. A large part of what earmarks an out-of-place character is a difference in tone. Maybe you're playing a semi-serious video game full of characters who don't crack jokes every 2 seconds, which is incidentally the perfect place to find a character who cuts through the tension by throwing jokes around. Naturally, the opposite works as well, but you don't often find a title willing to put a dry character into a game full of so much whimsy and wonderment. But there is another thing you can do, just straight up horror. Sounds good to me. I remember my first time playing through A Hat in Time. It was a lazy Tuesday afternoon, and, you know, there was stuff I needed to do that day, but instead, I sat down and I played through an intensely nostalgic experience and was swept up by its charm and personality. But then night fell, and I got to the spooky area, and things changed quite quickly. Mostly because, holy shit, Youngtown's in this game! Sub to Youngtown, this man! He makes a fine sneaky ghost! But moving beyond the main hub area of the Subcorn Forest, you find this abandoned mansion tucked away in this snowy corner of the world. You sneak in through the back entrance, work your way through the basement, and then... Do you remember that world of all the quirky Mafia characters and the happy music? I'd quite like to go back there. Can we go back there now? I'd really like that to happen, please. Queen Vanessa's manor, and by proxy, Queen Vanessa, is such a sudden shift in tone and feel in a bright, colourful game like A Hat in Time that there's no way you can prepare for it. 1 minute you're bouncing along to the catchy beats and talking to birds, and then, oh shit! When did I start playing Silent Hill? I'd like to stop now. It is an effective way to do horror though. Introduce a player to something so unusual completely out of nowhere and watch them squirm as they try to cope with it. I did not cope well. I don't think anyone did. With video games being this wonderfully open form of media that promotes a great deal of creativity as long as you're not making one every year for a faceless corporation, you naturally need to put a few rules in place. Not many, but enough to give everything a bit of structure and some foundations to build on. A consistent art style is perhaps one of them. Unless you're using it to achieve a particular effect, or if different art styles are the entire point of the video game, it's usually a bad idea to mix this stuff together. Kingdom Hearts gets by because it crosses Final Fantasy with Disney and a heavy heaping of original characters, and they all look sufficiently cartoony, so it doesn't look weird. Even though Donald Duck sharing the same screen as Final Fantasy characters is kinda weird. You'll get used to it. But that's only factoring in classic Disney, when most of their successes came from the world of animation and not, say, live-action characters on a movie set. Would turning Pirates of the Caribbean characters into cartoons be weird? Yeah, probably. Is taking the cast of Kingdom Hearts 2 to a Pirates of the Caribbean themed world in all of its realistically proportioned and live-action goodness a fast track to uncovering a whole selection of characters who don't look like they should be in this game? Yeah, probably. To be fair to them, Goofy mentions how everything looks a bit different, so at least Square know what they're doing, but it is very jarring when they're cutting back and forth from literal cartoons to
people, basically. This video game based on Who Framed Roger Rabbit sure does spend a long time talking about Heartless, whatever the fuck that is.
If the downside to going to all these different worlds in Kingdom Hearts is that you sometimes get a clash of characters and art styles, I would say the upside is the music, which is massively varied and kind of sort of fits the movie it comes from. Sometimes it's just a straight variation of a theme from that movie. And that's quite good for me because it means I can play a theme from Pirates of the Caribbean because it's in the Kingdom Hearts soundtrack, and in theory, that means I can avoid copyrights. YouTube doesn't work in theory anymore.
I remember reading something a while ago related to the best way to set up a world for characters to live in. I can't remember the context or the exact wording, but it mentioned how one of those two components has to be unusual to make it worthwhile. So you'd either have weird things happening in a fairly normal world with a standard array of characters, or you'd have a set of relatively predictable events occur in some crazy imaginative setting. Obviously these are just guidelines, with plenty of stories and video games sitting elsewhere on this weird looking Punnett square I've made, but it helps explain why Pokemon goes about its business in the way it does. A weird world inhabited by a large selection of unusual creatures and also some fairly normal NPCs. It makes for a good mix, really. That being said, as the Pokemon formula has become a little predictable over the years, we've seen the series start to gradually introduce more and more interesting characters. Mainly the crime syndicates, really, because there's more than one way of causing conflict in a world full of magical beasties. But it's not too crazy, though. This is still an RPG, and characters with bold ambitions and strange-looking hair? You should come to expect that by now. But surely someone has crossed the line at some point, right? Absolutely! His name is Mirabi, and this man is apparently a bad guy. No, yeah, I can understand that. I too have an irrational hatred of afros and dancing Pokemon and villains that pose no tangible threat to me or my progress through a video game. I love Mirabi, and he gives Pokemon Colosseum and XD Gale of Darkness a glorious dose of lunacy that is never explained before or after, especially since every other admin looks normal ? But he does not belong in this game. Or rather, you could easily put him in a rhythm game, Pokemon based or otherwise, and he would likely feel more at home. I'd love to know how he got caught up in all of this, because he is not interested in all of this crap about shadow Pokemon. Poor guy didn't even get a legendary Pokemon. I would feel bad about that.
Comic relief characters are a real enigma when you think how they are worked into the cast of characters, because their whole purpose in life is to make jokes. So most of the time you don't have to worry about giving them character development or giving them a satisfying arc or anything. You just give them all the jokes. Would that be annoying in the wrong game? You better fucking believe it is.
The Xenoblade Chronicles games walk a fine line between moments that give you enough pause to take them seriously, and moments that provide a bit of levity as a means of building personalities and relationships. You know, these are RPGs with complicated stories to tell, and they need to figure out a way of doing that without overwhelming the player. Usually that's a bit of comic relief, but it has to be timed correctly. If it starts getting annoying and you're not even halfway through, you might want to reconsider your options. So the Nopon are these weird egg-shaped creatures who talk in short, simplistic sentences and exist in these games as a means of world building, providing some variety of culture, and a decent amount of comic relief / adorableness? Is there a better word for that? I don't know. In the first game, you're immediately made to care about them because you have one in your party. His name is Ricky, and he is a treasure. However, in Xenoblade Chronicles X, one just shows up and doesn't really do anything. He doesn't impact the story in any way or develop over the course of the game. Tatsu just spends the whole game hanging around with you and your team, attempting and ultimately failing to lighten dark mood caused by being on an alien planet and running out of resources kind of quickly. It's a weird dynamic because every other character in the game is very intense and not one for spouting jokes, and yet you've got this irritating little nutsack chiming in at the worst possible times. Sorry, it's not that kind of game. Xenoblade 1 was, but Tatsu sticks out more in the second one, which, you know, it isn't even the second one, but then Xenoblade 2 is the third one. It's very confusing. There's only so many times I can hear the Tatsu is a potato and I must cook him joke before I wish for death. Don't make something adorable annoying. I think I'm at the stage now where making fun of Sonic 06 doesn't even make me happy anymore. Definitely there was a time when I could look at the glitches and the bad writing and basically every other part of the game and get a certain amount of satisfaction out of it, but now all I see is a huge pile of unfulfilled potential that doesn't have enough redeemable qualities to be able to defend itself. And that bums me out because there's a good game in here somewhere, but it's buried under enough crap that I'm not going to spend my time trying to find it. I feel like I could be doing other things, like making the obvious observation that the human characters in the game don't belong in this kind of setting. That's not much better, is it? Different art styles aside, which is effectively Pirates of the Caribbean in Kingdom Hearts 2 again, but dialed up to a very large number, I can only assume the existence of realistic human characters in Sonic 06 was meant to improve on their presence in the Sonic Adventure games, with Sonic Team having enough hardware power to make them look realistic. Or rather miss out realism entirely and tumble into the uncanny valley. Making one of these abominations a love interest didn't help either. That's what I'd like to focus on, I think. I refuse to believe that Princess Elise is meant to be in this game. She doesn't fit, in any way, shape or form, into what this game is trying to do, and making her an important character who Sonic has to chase after every 5 seconds is the kind of bad decision that tells me that even time could not have saved this game. Design-wise, Princess Elise is straight up a Final Fantasy character who has to save her kingdom from the wrath of this freakishly proportioned human with weird fucking eyes by sitting around and doing nothing, and at no point justifies her inclusion in a game starring a spiky blue hedgehog with presumably a very large penis. Whoa, hang on. What if Princess Elise is a self-insert from a member of the dev team who really likes Sonic? We might be onto something here.
This has been RabbidLuigi, and I'm somewhat sympathetic for Sonic Team including Princess Elise as a way of distinguishing Sonic 06 from any other game in the franchise, but you only get so many points for doing things differently. After a while, you have to stand up to scrutiny, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't fucking work. So what you do is you go away and you learn and you try your best to make sure this doesn't happen for the next time. That's what normal people would do.
Have you got an idea that you'd like me to turn to a countdown? Let me know in a comment down below, and make sure you check out my Twitter where I'll be turning the best submissions into a poll where you can then decide the best topic. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.